The COVID-19 pandemic has affected the entire world. The discipline of architecture has also been affected, not only in terms of architects' profession and business, but also in terms of design approach for built environment and open spaces. I am architect Archana Agarwal, and here in this presentation, I have compiled the data related to impact of COVID-19 pandemic on architecture. All the data presented here is acquired from articles and news items posted on the internet. The coronavirus has changed the pace by slowing things down. The daily lives of many have become eerily similar, that is, trapped within the confines of their homes, subject to a constant stream of anxiety-inducing alerts, and preoccupied with hand washing. Though these activities are nothing new, the situation that surrounds them is entirely unprecedented. In the blink of an eye, the world has been completely turned on its head, highlighting a lot of unfortunate truths. Socio-economic divisions have become clearer than ever. They have manifested in unequal access to healthcare, food, internet, and other basic resources, reflecting an overall lack of flexibility and security for the working class. So where do architects stand in this partition? And what can they do to not only adjust but also help? The first answer is simple. Architects and designers are part of the very fortunate group that can stay entirely indoors and keep a steady paycheck. Though site visits and trips to exhibitions have been put on hold, the relative security of those within this industry is being maintained through work from home solutions. Answering the second question is a challenge and will likely remain one far after this pandemic subsides. More and more of us live, work, and play where we have to, rather than where we want to. We may have built the image of a society based on competitive capitalism and freedom of movement, but the outbreak of the virus has revealed how thin that freedom actually is. Architecture is a reflection of our society and every element that comprises it, meaning the built environment is representative of the goods and evils of the systems that are in place. Good design is not accessible to all, leaving the poor to make do with whatever office, factory, housing block, or refugee camp they find themselves in. These are issues of space and movement, where we have to rather than where we want to is something that architects could be called on to address. This is not just a question of aesthetics, but of creating a feeling of belonging, of feeling at home, of making sense of the virtual space that we occupy for so many hours every day. Looking to respond constructively to the COVID-19 pandemic, many architects have turned to what they know best, that is design and innovation. The new restrictions placed on society have been a catalyst to rethink much of what we take for granted in the built environment. The way the world has adapted to this new lifestyle may forecast new norms following the COVID-19 outbreak. How do architects play their role today? What is the vision of the future of the city and architecture? What is the mission of the architects in this new era? In order to answer these questions, we must know what are the issues at hand. And for that, let us look into the predictions for the post-pandemic city. Out of the 5 stark predictions for the post-pandemic city, the first one is a steep decline of innovation. Cities are engines of innovation. The densities of people, resources, and institutions produce random collisions and juxtapositions from which new technologies and ideas spring up. Anti-COVID measures disrupt the physical proximity that cities thrive on in order to slow the spread of virus, and this puts much of the city life on hold until the pandemic runs its course. There is a real risk of becoming accustomed to this lower density way of life, especially if the pandemic continues for another year or more. And this lower density way of life could, in turn, slow the pace of random interactions that feed innovation. Density is a prerequisite for progress and development in its various forms. If working from home were to become the norm, what would replace the casual walk from your desk to the water cooler, or a discussion over a cup of coffee, or a random chat with your colleague? Such activities promote collaborations across projects and between different roles. In the office, you get opportunity to ask quick questions or to observe other people working. And a lack of such interactions can seriously harm the cohesiveness of projects and even the ability to keep projects on track. Removing the daily ritual of commuting from home to work and back, as painful as it may seem, can keep people from the random stimuli of seeing new buildings on the way, meeting strangers, smelling the wafting scents from food carts, and the like. Such experiences prompt new ideas that can be recontextualized in space and in time. The online platforms like Zoom and Google Meet, do they really accommodate all the nuances of body language, side conversations, nudges, random sketches, and witty comments from which new ideas really emerge? The next prediction for the post-pandemic city is upsurge of inequality and segregation. What would happen if white-collar working from home continues? The value of office buildings will deflate and it will become more difficult to maintain or retrofit office buildings. Companies can externalize much of their overhead by greatly reducing permanent offices. Many corporations will likely begin putting the burden of equipment and space onto employees themselves. This includes office space, furniture, high-speed internet connections, phones, computers, and more. This will accelerate the growth of inequality between those who can afford to front the cost of all this and those who cannot. Those who can easily find jobs and those who are doomed to repeating cycles of unemployment. In terms of building typologies, a long-term move towards remote work would imply the need for larger houses and apartments. In the US, we have already seen a widespread trend of wealthier workers moving out to the suburbs or to rural areas during the pandemic, as large homes are perhaps cheaper and certainly more plentiful in such areas. This distorts the real estate market in the target jurisdictions, making home buying less accessible for locals and likely resulting in rent increases down the line as higher property values and taxes are passed on to the renters. While getting out of the city is a short-term measure during the pandemic, but buying a house is not temporary. In the cities which have been abandoned by high-income workers, the rents might fall for a time. But those who stay in cities would come to face new waves of disinvestment as social services and resources follow the wealthy back into the suburbs. Workers, especially in the industry of care like nursing, daycare, etc., may need to reverse commute. The patterns of inequality and segregation will come to mark our cities. The third prediction for a post-pandemic city is reversing of sustainability. As people become skeptical of the safety of riding public transport, the shift towards using private or personal transport is seen by those who can afford it. This in turn reproduces non-sustainable trends like over-reliance on fossil fuels and time wasted in traveling. Waste can also be produced in the drive to retrofit city center office buildings for other uses if remote working continues. Construction is a leading producer of waste material as well as for carbon emissions. Though it may be easier to convert a city center office building into a co-working space or to change the office layout for a different kind of work, but to convert an office space into a residential space would need a lot of retrofitting and a lot of modification, which would be against sustainability, not only in terms of wastage and pollution, but also the spaces created will not allow for the required daylighting and ventilation. The fourth prediction about the post-pandemic city is the attack on privacy. As you're all aware, when you go to buy grocery or while you're commuting or you're eating at a restaurant, you pass through innumerable technically enhanced checkpoints where you are frisked or your bag goes through a scanner. So these security measures may remain in place even after the COVID has passed. The technology that is associated with taking temperatures from a distance varies, but some versions rely on face recognition, some on biometrics. And as these technologies mushroom through cities, marking the spaces of commerce, even the public spaces. It is important to figure out where this biometric data is being housed and for what purpose. The future technologies may be more invasive. The pandemic offered corporations the opportunity to enter the homes of their employees through productive programs that track employee activity on their computers. This extension of managerial oversight into the private space of life and leisure seemed excessive during the immediate crisis of COVID-19. But as companies learn to more efficiently wield this software, this surveillance can only become more coercive and intrusive. And the fifth prediction about the post-pandemic city is isolation and fragmentation. Considering together the increased isolation and anxiety prompted by the pandemic has the tendency to have long-term public health impacts of their own. Social isolation, lack of movement, and loss of opportunity can lead to worsening health outcomes in the long term. The increased economic inequality and the distinct impacts of working from home can only increase political and social fragmentation as people fall out of touch with other ways of life. Pre-pandemic India was already reeling from the pandemics of income inequality, deaths of misery, and racist violence. The changes brought by the reaction to COVID-19 may increase the adverse effects of all these pre-existing conditions. Restoring our cities post-COVID is an opportunity to rebuild the public realm on a stronger foundation of solidarity and social equity with benefits to follow, including better public health, innovation, and the ability to better address climate change. How should be the settlements of the future? How will people react to such an insecure world? What impact will these changes have on the public spaces such as streets, squares, shopping malls, cinemas, museums, and on their external appearance? How would be the dwellings of the future? What will be the function and the shape of windows, terraces, balconies, etc., as the only means of possible real communication with the outside world and people? Responding to all these questions, we need to devise new feasible solutions for dwellings, educational facilities, working place, and urban spaces. Though we can't say exactly what the future will look like, we can examine the current trends and concepts that have played huge roles during the pandemic. Here are some of the trends that may have long-lasting impacts on the way cities are designed. As we saw earlier in the predictions, the trend would be to shift away from large city offices. Worldwide, people are working from home due to COVID-19 lockdown measures. In central business districts, large office buildings and skyscrapers have been deserted. Now that work is being done remotely, some are re-evaluating the need for such spacious and expensive spaces. Remote working would definitely cut costs, but the absence of these offices could be harmful to surrounding businesses. A long-term reallocation of building uses in central business districts may therefore be thought of. Another trend post-pandemic would be decrease in car reliance. As people are confined within their homes, automobile usage has been on a stark decline. As a result, streets have been left bare and greenhouse gas emissions have dropped. The impact on oil prices has been considerable. Some cities have temporarily converted empty streets into walking and cycling only zones. Italy has announced that it would transform 21.7 miles of its streets for cycling after lockdown. Though this global crisis has been detrimental to the livelihoods of millions, the pandemic's impact on the environment has been positive. We did talk about reverse sustainability while discussing the predictions, which was due to the shift from urban to suburban areas, increasing the travel distance and increasing the dependency on private vehicles. We also discussed the increase in construction activity and production of more waste due to that, due to retrofitting of the office spaces which have been deserted. But there is a positive impact also because of the more pedestrian friendly environment that has been created in the lockdown. Another trend would be new forms of public spaces. The way public spaces are designed could change in a post-pandemic world, along with how they are prioritized in urban areas. As the pandemic has converted people into full-time pedestrians, public spaces have been some of the few sources of leisure outside of the home. This would help congregate and to strengthen frayed community bonds, be it through parks, plazas, promenades, community centers, or streets turned over to pedestrians. It is also important to think about how these spaces can be kept safe in moments like COVID-19 pandemic. One of the architectural firms has unveiled their idea for a park that is oriented to maintain social distancing while allowing people to be outdoors. In future emergencies, parks like this would continue to offer spaces of refuge and serenity in urban areas. There would be new trends in restaurant designing. As lockdown restrictions have loosened in some Asian locations, including Hong Kong, South Korea, and China, restaurants have reopened, offering a glimpse of what eating out could be like after quarantine. Some restaurants have mandatory temperature checks at their entrances, and most are following social distancing rules. Seating has been limited and spaced out. There are limits on the amount of people that can sit at a table together, and mask is still required except while eating. The use of plastic guards to section off tables and booths has been common. At one restaurant in Shanghai, there is a full body disinfectant spray machine that sanitizes customers before they enter. There is even a restaurant in Beijing that uses a robot to deliver food. It remains to be seen how many of these layout variations and design features remain after the pandemic is over. Another expected trend is an increase in modular construction. The COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the need to design and build fast in emergency situations. As the healthcare industry continues to be overwhelmed, the demand for more facilities such as hospitals, quarantine centers, testing sites, and temporary lodgings has never been so high. Given this demand and urgent need for these spaces, modular construction has become increasingly common. Modular construction is a process where buildings are assembled through prefabricated modules. This technique is fast, flexible, and less wasteful than traditional buildings. As seen in Wuhan, which was pandemic's epicenter, the city used modular construction for 2 hospitals and built the facility in about 2 weeks. The quick and flexible nature of modular construction could have far-reaching uses outside of the medical industry also. Another design approach that has been popular during the pandemic is adaptive reuse. That is the process of using existing structure to serve new purpose. Adaptive reuse is an efficient and sustainable approach to creating new spaces, especially for aging cities. Along with modular construction, it's proven to be very effective in creating emergency facilities. While some convention centers have been converted into hospitals, a number of sports facilities have also been transformed into medical facilities. The pandemic has also triggered new innovations in lightweight architecture. Many companies have developed various architecture and design solutions that address the need for emergency facilities. Many have been tent structures built to serve as field hospitals and test centers. There have been innovations like rapidly deployable pop-up recovery unit, shipping containers converted into biocontainment pods, and modular critical care units that can be easily transported. The portability and ease of assembling of lightweight architecture is perfect for disaster and crisis response. And the most promising trend is flexible building design. It's not a new concept, but the importance of adaptability has become more evident during this pandemic. Whether it involves creating a makeshift emergency facility or it includes reorganizing one's home to make it suit better to remote working, in both the cases, flexible design is required. An Australian architectural firm is already promoting their ADAPT system. The system includes a series of adjustable walls and screens that would be used to segment an open plan apartment into various dedicated spaces. The same approach could be used for office buildings too. According to pod manufacturer, floor plans will look different, be more flexible, and space allocation will be adjusted. Companies will want the ability to quickly modify and scale their workspaces in the case that something like this pandemic were to happen again in the future. Now let's look at how home designs will change. As people adapt to life at home during the pandemic, the functionality and cleanliness of each space has been thrown into focus. The first trend in home design we have already seen, and that is the new interest in adaptable layouts. Our connections to our homes, both physical and mental, have never been greater, and this may persist, even intensify after this pandemic subsides. If this happens, homes will need to accommodate a greater amount of services and functions. Designated spaces for a great number of specific activities such as reading, sleeping, physical activity, and entertainment will be desired. Hosting a greater array of activity spaces will require a greater degree of flexibility and adaptability. Designers have already begun to explore approaches in this direction. One Australian firm, as already told, has developed Adapt system that utilizes adjustable walls and screens in order to transform an open plan apartment into various dedicated spaces. Another trend in home design is a universal need for private outdoor space. Since the onset of the pandemic, our appreciation of the outdoors and nature seems to have greatly increased. The act of simply going for a walk or sitting in a park has been a monumental source of reprieve. However, in the midst of a lockdown scenario, these activities don't guarantee safety and aren't universally accessible. As a result, the demand for home designers to provide private outdoor spaces for every type of home looks like increasing. It will be up to the architects to work out how to integrate the outdoors into even the most compact of homes, experimenting with roof gardens, micro backyards, porches, and balconies. People may also seek a closer connection between their living spaces and the natural world, with folding glass doors merging these two zones together. The prevailing trend today is new forms of home office. With people forced to work from home, many dining room tables have been converted into makeshift home offices. Now, people need not travel for long distances and they can avoid transferring between busy trains, but these home offices don't provide all the amenities necessary for a productive workspace. Still, many are enjoying the flexibility of working from home, so much so that remote working may become the new norm. If this trend continues, there will be a rising need for functional private offices to be an integral part of the home. Some have even conceptualized ways to integrate home offices into private outdoor spaces. One Brazilian architect has developed buried studio concept that features a workplace designed into the front garden of a residence, allowing one to feel like they are leaving their house to go for work. Sanitized entryway is another trend. At a restaurant in Shanghai, following the lifting of restrictions in China, customers are sprayed by a disinfectant machine as they enter. A similar concept may arise at residences. In order to keep homes safe and clean, entryways will become clearly defined transitional spaces where one can remove their shoes, hang their jackets, and sanitize their hands before entering. Smart kitchen design has also become trendy. With people more inclined to stay at home, the significance of kitchens within homes has risen as well. Pantries are going to become more necessary as people aim to make fewer trips to the stores. Smart kitchen design will also be more prominent, especially due to the rise of the hands-free mindset. This means more voice-activated technology in the kitchen, controlling things such as lights, faucets, and appliances. Air purification systems have also become important. Air quality has been a major focal point throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. People may begin to pay more attention to the air quality within their homes by limiting the amount of unfiltered outside air that comes in. Therefore, we may see a rise in air purification systems which take in outside air, recondition it, and supply it as fresh air to a building. These systems can work in conjunction with regular HVAC to make homes healthier. Having seen some predictions for post-pandemic city and some home design trends post-pandemic, now let's see some office design trends. Workplaces are likely to undergo a substantial makeover. From the way we enter the office itself, automatic temperature checks, sanitization stations, hands-free elevators, and wider walkways becoming the norm in office design. Likewise, the dense open plan office is likely to undergo a devolution with spread out, compartmentalized workstations likely to return. There will also be more importance placed on offering access to fresh air and adequate ventilation. There will also be a serious re-evaluation of the senior living industry. Changes could range from compartmentalized communities to the introduction of technologies that will allow better communication with friends and family should an pandemic outbreak occur again. The lockdown and impending recession are causing considerable stress to architects, particularly due to the impacts they are having on the profession. Architecture is a stressful vocation at the best of times, but amid the lockdown and feared recession, the mental health of practitioners is particularly under strain. The combined challenges of coordinating with clients and colleagues, dealing with delayed construction, and grappling with home life, which may include bored children, cramped living spaces, or a lack of socialization, all are combining to add considerable stress to architects and risking their well-being in the process. Moreover, the concerns surrounding a slowdown in work due to recession, which already architects are seeing, is adding to mental health concerns. So what can firms do to help support their employees? Ben Chenon is the head of well-being at SL Architecture and is the founder of Architects Mental Well-being Forum. He is well aware of the challenges facing the industry. And in a bid to help, the organization has developed a COVID-19 toolkit, which is designed to provide advice and support on this issue. Here is an extract from the interview of Ben Chenon, and this is what he has to say. We know this is a difficult time for most people. We are having our good days and our bad days. However, there is a real risk that for some people, mental health might deteriorate drastically as a result of isolation, health worries, and blurred boundaries between work and downtime. Furthermore, a fall in workloads for many architects has seen furloughing, and even pay cuts across the industry, which brings with it a number of concerns, from fears over financial security to the dilemma of how to create a new routine and maintain a sense of purpose when on furlough. Our mission at the Architects Mental Wellbeing Forum has always been to improve mental health in the industry. And at this time, we felt it was vital to support people working in architecture as quickly as we could. I hope this toolkit provides some help and resources which make a difference to anybody who is struggling. It is important to remember that we are undergoing a time of real change, and this can be difficult for people. We all are trying to get our heads around the long-term impacts of this pandemic, and it is affecting everything from our daily thought patterns, use of news and social media, and even our sleep and dreams. Combine this with isolation and loneliness, which we know are very bad for our mental health. And it's no surprise that many people are finding this a challenging time. And as mentioned above, job security is a cause of anxiety for many people right now, and not only just in architecture. The toolkit features a number of tips for architects on maintaining well-being during the pandemic. I am always encouraging people, particularly architects, to remember the importance of self-care. As an industry, we seem to have developed a habit of perfectionism and a project comes first mentality, which is great for our clients, but it can often mean our own mental health suffers. For this reason, I like the self-care ideas in the toolkit. I have personally been finding pleasure in the small things during lockdown, such as riding my bike and relearning how to paint. It was great to hear from different members of the forum about different ideas they have been implementing to support the staff. From online fitness clubs to friendly schemes and more formal support such as resilience training and online CPDs. CPD means continuing professional development. We have found a number of things to be particularly effective, like followed by an online meeting, having an office-wide chat session, or more social elements, such as having an online club with movie nights and having newsletters 3 times a week with updates, putting challenges and quizzes and drawing events to help everybody stay better connected. By creating a resilient mindset, we can all become more resistant to the impact of external conditions on our happiness. For me, this was about gaining a better understanding of what was important to both my happiness and my own mind through a daily mindfulness practice. But there are many different routes to nurturing resilience. It comes down to respecting your mental health as much as we do our physical health. And this means respecting things like sleep, diet, fitness, and entertainment. And of course, keeping in touch with people, even if it's more difficult than usual right now. Up till now, we have seen how this COVID-19 pandemic has affected the architects, the mental health of architects, and the profession of architects. We have also seen how this pandemic has changed the design trends. What is the prediction for the city design? What would be the trend for home design? and office design. After going through all this, let us now look at some examples of design, some thoughts proposed by architects. The Royal Institute of British Architects organized an international design competition by the name of Rethink 2025. And the task was to imagine our post-pandemic world. It was open to architects and students. The brief was to envision what our built environment after COVID-19 might look like in 2025 in terms of healthcare spaces or remote learning or high density living or public transport or high streets versus online shopping or international travel or maybe use of technology to monitor and control populations. Some entries shortlisted by REBA are presented here. The first one is called Get Everyone In. The project proposes reusing empty office spaces to house the homeless. Through the redesign of office towers, it suggests the inclusion of communal health facilities on ground level, bringing nature into the space with gardens at the mid-level and translating a deep plan office floor into hostel-style bedrooms on upper floors, with space left to accommodate some office workers. The second shortlisted entry is called a Catalogue of Regeneration. This project proposes a series of incremental improvements that can be made to streets and houses. The step-by-step guide sets out 5 key stages of regeneration, starting with repairing potholes, moving to creation of WUNF zones, which would reduce the traffic noise, creating traffic-calmed streets, and then working to improve and expand individual homes. The next shortlisted entry is called Community Retrofit. This proposal details the reinvention of commuter hubs and tourist destinations of city centers as localized districts with less travel, home working, and very limited shopping. Empty department stores and half-used office spaces are retrofitted with a school, an urban farm, new homes, bars, cafes, collaborative working spaces, and leisure facilities in close proximity, providing maximum opportunities for social interaction and chance encounters. This entry is called EcoRG post-COVID. This proposal seeks to address challenges faced by ethnic minority communities who have been disproportionately affected by coronavirus. Often excluded from planning decision making, ethnic minorities also often live in more built up and polluted areas. This idea seeks to address this through engaging the local community and working with local government to make tangible changes. Presented in the form of a comic, the proposal focuses on Newham, which has the highest air pollution in London. It proposes making it the green lungs of London by radically cutting road traffic on domestic streets and changing the culture of car driving. This entry is called Far Off is Close at Hand. It proposes a clever way to repurpose existing buildings through a reimagining of the high street. It includes converting existing shops into homes, that still function as a point of exchange with spaces for meeting and entertaining. This proposal is called Great London Agriculture. The most ambitious proposition in terms of scale, this idea centers around agriculture becoming interwoven with the city, including tiny mapped patchworks of food production linked over time by corridors of biodiversity. From community orchards to seaweed farms based around existing green spaces and low carbon transport links, this is an agroecological approach to land use and a green innovation network. Local regenerative food production is intended to build respect for food, offer super fresh seasonal produce in increasing biodiversity and allowing wider ecosystems to recover. It could also play a part in reducing threats to future pandemics. This idea is called house farm payment. It proposes a timber extension to create a new space between private home and public social space. It offers hydroponic growing space for fruits and vegetables. It would promote food security and would reduce crowds in markets. The next shortlisted entry is called PostPandemic Exchange. This proposal tackles the use and function of three building types and the streets around them. Garden streets are created in city centers. Since shops and high streets are not favored, this entry argues that entrepreneurship can flourish in the form of markets and rooftop exercise classes. With bank frontages taken over by bakery business. The condition examined here is that of a much neglected suburb. This proposal is called Streets Are Made for Walking. This project takes the reduced capacity of public transport and increased space allocated to cycling and pedestrian infrastructure. It develops a method for implementing shared streets with cleaner, greener, and safer environment. Placemaking and purposeful streets are a priority in stage 1, whereas in the later stage, we see the development of inter-neighborhood connections in lateral rings expanding from the city center, increasing the potential for polycentricity and reducing demand on the city center. The next entry is called the village city. This proposal suggests a new rural model to revive abundant villages. And the concept is to produce the facilities of a town for a cluster of villages. How do we allow villages to retain their character but be fit for the future? How do we reinvest the concept of localism? And how do we capitalize on the improved air quality and the move towards zero carbon? The village city would include health center, care home, sheltered housing, shops, bank, post office, cafe, learning resource center for workshops, evening classes, office for meetings and small businesses, gym, sports hall, renewable energy center, and the like. Ideally, these facilities would be provided far from the villages, providing a 4-kilometer to and fro healthy walkable distance. And around this center, the proposal is to plant 40,000 trees combined with running and cycling tracks. This proposal is called window living. The idea is to propose a clever window that can swing open into a balcony or a halfway to be enjoyed as a semi-outdoor bench, giving different states of interaction with nature, neighbors, and the city. Step out of the box and through the window is the concept. For lockdown recurrences and rainy days, the setup also acts as a virtual window with HD screen, allowing a full perspective so communication is not just from behind the computer. We have more information to share with you related to impact of COVID-19 pandemic on architecture. Please see part 2 for more information. Thank you.